But why don't we kick it off here? I wanted to start by thanking everyone for joining us, whether it's good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're at in the country today. Again, quick logistics for anyone that is joining. We've got a chat box and a Q&A box. So if you can ask the questions through the Q&A box, I'll definitely get those, and we're going to try to answer them into as close as real time as we can today. But I'm your co-host today, Matt Kors, and today it's really kind of a special episode for me because we're gonna have a lot of fun as we always do. But I've got a special guest co-host, if you will, the founder and CEO over here at Crexi, Mike DeGiorgio, is joining us today, and I've been waiting for him to join me on one of these. It's been a while, so thanks for doing that, Mike. And so today what we're going to be doing is more or less a fireside chat, if you will, with Kyle Matthews, founder and CEO of Matthews Real Estate Investment Services. And really quick, Kyle, I'll do an intro. I only have a few minutes, but it's a pretty impressive list of accomplishments I can get through here. Founder and CEO of Matthews Real Estate Investment Services in 2015. Before that, #1 ranked broker globally at Colliers, many awards and accolades as top producing broker at Marcus & Millichap before that, licensed real estate broker in 30 states, 5,000 transactions plus in counting of many property types and locations, obviously. And today, you've grown Matthews to one of the largest brokerage firms in the country. Kyle, welcome. Thanks for joining us. I know you're really busy, so we really appreciate the time today with you.
No, Matt, Mike, I appreciate you having me on. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. I wish we could have done this interview live, but I recognize this is unique times for everyone, so I'll do the best I can to answer all of yours and the audience questions. So let's do this. Let's get after it.
Awesome. Yeah, Matt, thanks for letting me join you on Pro Perspective this week. And Kyle, excited to chat, man. It's been a while since I've seen you.
Yeah,
congrats on everything you guys have been doing.
You
I
too.
guess to start, I always like to hear the origin story. You were an athlete in school, obviously a family that's well known across the country. But what got you started in commercial real estate? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I want to loosely define as an athlete. I wouldn't. I played football at SC, so when you play there, you very quickly learn what is an actual athlete, and then I was somewhere below that. So that actually kind of layers into the answer. Was I went to SC. I was very blessed to play ball there. I played with Matt and Reggie Lindale, all those guys. We were on some awesome teams, some championship teams, and the blessing amongst many of being involved in that experience is very quickly I was able to identify that I probably would have to find a different profession than football. So in college did a couple different internships, and ultimately I met with an alumni. So how did I get in the business? I met with an alumni who owned a lot of apartment buildings, and I went and had lunch with him. I said, "What do you do?" He explained to me ownership and passive income and all that. And I said, "Well, man, that's great. I'd love to own buildings and get income every month." And he's like, "Well, do you have any money?" And I go, "No, I don't have any money. I think I had $700. And he goes, "Do you know anything about real estate?" And I said, "No, I don't know anything about real estate." And he's like, "Well, then you should be a real estate broker." And the reasoning for it was very well thought out. He said, by being an agent, you're going to see 1 million deals, you're going to underwrite deals, you're going to sell deals, you're going to represent buyers on deals, and you're going to learn the business from the inside out. And his name was Dave Hodgkins. Anchor Pacifica was the company. So I'm very grateful for Dave taking the time, and he was very candid and honest about brokerage and how hard it is those first couple of years. So I didn't go in with any misconceptions about what the business looks like the first couple of years. And he introduced me to CBRE, Cushman Wakefield, and Marcus & Millichap. And I went and interviewed at all 3 companies. And I called my dad and I said, "Hey, I think this is what I want to do for a living." And he goes, "Great, you need to take the first job offered to you." So I got a call from Jonathan Weiss of the Encino office of Marcus & Millichap. And he said, it was a Friday. He goes, "Kyle, we'd like to offer you the position." I said, "I'm done." Like, I took it. And he said, "All right, be in the office Monday at, whatever time." And I think he said to be there at 8. So I showed up at 6 and I sat outside the office for an hour and a half until someone let me in. But yeah, so that's how I got in the business, to answer your question.
I love that. I can relate to that story quite a bit. So you get to Marcus, young guy, fresh out of school. What do you think separated you from the pack earlier in your career?
Well, it definitely wasn't my knowledge. So it was my work ethic. This is just my opinion. You know, my first 6 or 7, it was a very slow process to achieving any type of success in this business for me. It was really painful. So my first 6, 7 years really consisted of me getting to the office at 6 a.m., staying until 8 or 9 p.m., Monday through Friday. I worked Saturdays, and usually I would say 2 or 3 Sundays a month I'd work. I'd go in the office. I made a tremendous amount of cold calls because I didn't know anyone in the industry. I didn't have any pre-existing relationships with property owners. So the only way I could generate business was by picking up a phone and hammering the phones and just using the phone and some interest generator as a reason to go meet a client. I met with lots of clients, and down the road I ended up doing business with a lot of them. But you know, eventually I figured the business out. I figured out what my value proposition was, and you know what I did well, and also what I didn't do well, and worked hard to improve those areas. And it took me 18 months to close my first deal, and then like another 8 months after that to close a second. So it was a tough sled there for a while, but ultimately that experience, those first 24 months, you know, in my opinion, laid a perfect foundation for understanding this industry and what it takes to be successful. So the answer to your question is, it really just came down to my work ethic and my ability to withstand punishment, so to speak.
Yeah, you got to appreciate that punishment a little bit in
Yeah.
the beginning. And then so you obviously became one of the top brokers in the world globally for Colliers. Did you think you'd finish your career there, or did you see a path of one day leaving and starting?
Yeah,
You know.
you know, I get the question a lot. I love my time at Colliers. There was some unbelievable people there, and people that I still have very close relationships with. People, my kids are friends with their kids, and we go on vacations together. You know, guys like Jeff Ludwig, Chris Sheehan. There's just a lot of great people at Colliers when I was there. I was very, very blessed to work with them. But you know, I get this question a lot, so the answer I've more or less settled on is I really didn't look at my career in that way of like, you know, am I going to work here forever, or is this where I'm going to stay? I mean, what will the rest of my career look like? I was very much, you know, living day to day, focused on, professionally speaking, how best to allocate the 24 hours I had each day to accomplish my mission of executing a lot of brokerage assignments that I personally had been awarded, while at the same time being the best coach and mentor I could to the 5 or 6 mentee agents that by then I had agreed to take on. Most of them were like friends of my younger brothers who wanted to get into real estate, and I'd get a call and I couldn't say no. And even when I tried to say no, guys like Mike James, Aaron Klein, Chad Kurz, like, to their credit, they wouldn't take no for an answer. So eventually I agreed to, against my better judgment, mentor them. And so even though, you know, I was working 15 to 16 hours a day, and those professional responsibilities and commitments it didn't afford me much time to stop and think about where I would be for the rest of my career or what it would look like. And this is on top of my wife, Alana, and I. We were building a family at the same time. I have 3 kids now, 9, 6, and 3, Brody, Kylie, Dixie, and making sure I was present at home to the best degree possible, knowing that more often than not, time dedicated to work is mutually exclusive to time dedicated to my family. And so to answer your question, I didn't spend time thinking about where I would be for the rest of my career. I was just so grateful for the opportunities I was working on at that time. And you know, I didn't assume I'd have a long career. So I've always carried a healthy sense of anxiety and fear of failure. So I understand the question. Obviously, I get it a lot. It was like one day at a time. It still is, I mean, candidly, but yeah, so I didn't view it that way.
One day at a time. I can appreciate that as a
Yeah.
quote to live by. If you did, what do you think you would have done if you didn't get into real estate?
Oh, I would have been a football coach in the NFL. So and thank God I didn't, to be honest. You know, so I'm blessed to come from the Matthews family. I'm very proud of their athletic accomplishments. My accomplishments are separate of theirs. But one of the blessings is connections in the league. And so when I graduated from SC, I'd like to think I had a very, very deep knowledge of football and how the game worked, having grown up in the family I did, and then my experience at SC learning under Pete Carroll, who was just an unbelievable coach and an unbelievable experience. And so I had this knowledge. Clearly, athletically, that wasn't my future, but I had a family relationship on the Tennessee Titans. And so at the time, the way it was presented to me was I had the opportunity at 22 to go have a high probability of getting hired as like a quality control assistant for the Titans, which is in essence the entry level position to getting in the coaching ranks. And I was in a serious relationship at the time with my wife, now Alana, and we sat down when I graduated, and she's a very ambitious person too. She had her own career, and I said, hey, look, there's this opportunity. It is unique, but it's a terrible lifestyle. I mean, you're working. I mean, not that I'm afraid of work, but you more or less work all the time. And there was a very high, there's like 93% divorce rate in the NFL coaching ranks at the time. I don't know what it is today. And I just said, while this opportunity is a dream for many, I said, I don't think this is the right way to go. And at that time, I had not settled on real estate. And so the answer to your question though would have been coaching. So I'd like to think that today would be a head coach at, USC or something, but who knows? That's an alternate life that I am not living. So.
Fair. How do you think some of those, the high performance family, obviously, I think there's a lot of, skill sets in sports that kind of lend themselves well to being successful in commercial real estate. How do you think some of those, lessons you learned from Pete Carroll, just, some of the things about being an athlete translate to being successful in commercial real estate?
It's a great question. It's one of the things, it's not the only thing, but one of the things we look for in our hires is some form of competitive background, sports being obviously the most common. As a listeners can imagine, there's a lot of parallels between high performance athletics and the real estate brokerage industry. It's generally a meritocracy, where much like football, the best player plays. So coming from a family that had success in the NFL, I was blessed to be able to grow up in an environment where I could watch my dad and how he approached his profession, which was being a linebacker in the NFL for 19 years. He retired when I was 16. So again, I was very fortunate. I was old enough to remember going to his games all the way to high school. And, but more importantly, I was able to learn from him the physical and a mental approach to his profession, to the game that he played. And I've been able to more or less apply to the best of my abilities that same approach to my game, which is brokerage, and now being a CEO. So to summarize, our family's approach breaks down really into two ways. All right, one is physical, one is mental. So physically, what has historically separated any athlete or athletes in my family is our willingness to outwork competition. Right. So again, it gets back to our ability to mentally suffer to a degree, but continue to push forward. So we've never relied on any natural talent to solely lead us to success. You hope you have some, but I can't sit here and say that any of us really do. Whether we had talent or not, we let others be the judge of that. We knew that what would separate ourselves from all the others would be our ability to outwork people. And so mental fortitude, mental toughness were very often the topic of conversation at the Matthews dinner table. Eventually, some of us are pretty hard-headed, but that did sink in, and that I think is what ensured at least my own survival in the business early on. And whether it was football or real estate, it was the mental toughness and how that allowed to push ourselves through extended periods of failure, exhaustion what at times feels hopelessness. The second part, Mike, is the mental approach, and it's consistent in great athletes. You look at Kobe or Tom Brady or whoever it is. It's preparation and then curiosity. Like our preparation is significant, whether it's preparing for a meeting with a client, a negotiation, or if you're preparing to go against Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or someone. The amount of preparation that myself or agents at Matthews or people, the top performing athletes go through. It's significant. It's a massive process here for us, at least. And then to supplement that, we all possess, I would argue, a natural curiosity towards anything that is unlearned, so to speak. In that no matter how prepared or experienced we may be in a certain field or profession, we never stop searching out new methods, habits, training, or advice or mentors that because we're always looking for an angle we're always looking for an edge over the competition. And so we're always willing to accept that there's likely many things out there we don't know, and then we go search those things out and to the best of our abilities look to apply that to our game.
How do you those are great traits. I think you've now grown Matthews to one of the top 10 brokerage companies in the world. You started with 12 people and now well over 300 people. How do you facilitate or kind of pass those traits down to people you hire? What kind of skill sets do you look for, and how do you make sure that kind of mentality that you were raised with translates to everybody on the Matthews team as you guys continue to grow, especially?
Look, the best way to ensure a similar mindset is really at the hiring process, is to the best of our abilities, finding, I would say, locating the young talent, the young men and women who share. I'll say we have a saying at Matthews: we don't hire skill sets, we hire mindsets. Okay, because the skill sets we can teach. We can teach you how to underwrite a property. We could teach you sales skills. We could teach you what to say and how to say it. We could teach you how to cap rates, GRMs, IRRs, but we can't teach you the mindset of how to need to be great. It's wants and needs. So I spend time talking to the agents. Their first day at the company, I always say, raise your hand if you want to be successful. Of course, everyone raises their hand, and then I ask the question there. I say, well, raise your hand if you need to be successful. And you'll see the hands start to go up a little bit. They don't know if it's a trick question. I said, so think about the question: who needs to be successful? And then I talk about the hierarchy of needs. It's air, water, food, shelter, right? As Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I said, we're looking for people who have a fifth basic need, and that's success. And if you need to be successful, you will push through the significant amount of failure you experience early on. You will push through the late nights and the early mornings and getting to the office when it's dark and going home when it's dark, and the cold calls and the meetings where you show up and you just get shut down. I mean, you're going to push through all of that if you truly are a person who needs to be successful. And so the best way I could impart that Matthews mentality onto agents at Matthews is really not me, giving it to them, or it's really just finding the people who already have it and then putting them in a position to be successful. On top of that, we definitely, and myself and a lot of the executives here, spend a tremendous amount of time to the best of our abilities, clearly communicating early on what their expectations should be of the career and the difficulties and the sacrifice that lie ahead early on, and as well as the upside and why you do it. But we spend a lot of time communicating effectively what makes this place special, what makes this place great, and it really is the culture, which is a byproduct of the mentality of the agents that, to the best of our abilities, we look to hire in everybody. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned something more to get a little bit more towards the topic of like how the industry is changing. Things that you've always looked for to stay ahead of competition, how that was always taught, how you guys want to do whatever you can to stay ahead. I'm really impressed when I go in the Matthews office, when I met with you, about the tech stack you guys use, all of the different thought you guys have put in, not only behind how you find the best people when they, talent-wise when you're hiring, but then also, how you guys stay ahead of the competition. Like, can you tell us a little bit about what you're willing to share, some of those, things you guys have done to go up above and beyond?
Yeah, it starts with humility, knowing that you're not the best, or not assuming you're the best, or what you offer is the best. And so having the humility to saying, as highly as I think of our company and our platform, and I recognize I'm very biased, having the humility to say we're not, I always say we don't have the perfect platform, but we never stop our pursuit of perfection and the perfect platform. So we never stop pursuing that, and that comes with the humility of recognizing that there's always an opportunity to get better. Even if you don't see one, if you search hard enough, long enough, you will find a way where you're inefficient, or you can leverage a new technology or something. So the first is the mentality as an executive of identifying, hey, there's got to be ways we can be better, and not being afraid to spend the money on getting better, because inevitably it's a capital question, right? So it's making sure our platform at all times, offers our agents and everything. When I say agents, it's ultimately about the clients who own the real estate. Anything we offer the agents is just going to be a benefit pass through to the client. So, without divulging trade secrets, it's offering the most advanced tech systems that allow our agents to reach the most amount of buyers on either an investment sale or a leasing assignment. We do this using technology to increase our digital delivery ratios, increase our click to open ratios, ultimately our open to downloaded ratios. I mean, you talk about brokerage, 99% of marketing today is digital marketing, right? It's emails, it's websites, it's some sort of digital production material delivered to the client. And yet I would probably say 95% of agents in the industry couldn't tell you what their, email to open ratio, their open to downloaded ratio are. Those are things that we spend a tremendous amount of time at Matthews focusing on. So I don't know if that's a tech forward company or, an advanced company. That's just how we, from the day we were founded, that's how we approach it. In addition, we provide our agents and clients a system that has embedded proprietary technology that we spent a lot of money and time developing. Based on my experience as an agent, at other firms where I wasn't provided almost anything, it's kind of like the wouldn't it be nice company. Like there are so many times like, man, wouldn't it be nice if I could see which buyers are looking at what things, or wouldn't it be nice if I didn't have to spend half my time coordinating drone photography and being, in PowerPoint, creating a marketing design template, and I'm not a marketing person. My material looks awful. Wouldn't it be nice if actual professional marketing people did that for me so I could spend more of my time executing the assignments that the clients hired me to execute? So, but technology that alerts our clients within, 25, 30 seconds of when a buyer goes on their website or looks at a deal or opens an email, it allows them to see in a real time, their marketplace and what buyers are doing what with the listings or offerings they have. So, furthermore, we're experiencing with like algorithmic buyer scoring, based on their digital body language, to allow our agents when they receive a new listing to have a probable leads list provided day one, where it's okay, based on, these 30 buyers over the last 60 days have looked at this specific product type exponentially more than anyone else. Therefore, this is your likely lead list, in addition to the traditional brokerage, which is call the local owners, call buyers in a 1031 exchange, work your broker networks. So, it's just the tip of the iceberg of how we're leveraging new technologies to help put our agents and our clients in the best position possible. But, your question is, without sharing trade secrets, how are we leveraging technology, right? And, hopefully I answered it.
No, it really is impressive. I think to any principals or owners of real estate on the call, you guys will be pretty impressed when engaging with the Matthews team on just how deep they go into and how thoughtful they are, really from bringing people onto their team all the way through bringing deals on, transacting and leasing deals. So I appreciate you sharing a little bit of that, Kyle. I know it's
Yep.
There's a variety of people listening in, but that's really, really helpful. Talk to us about culture. I think culture is something that people think is, just kind of like a talking point that everybody has to say. But, it's one thing I've learned can really separate a business from others very, very quickly. And I have a lot of thoughts there too. But, you went from 12 to 300 plus. Talk to us about what the culture is like at Matthews, why you think that's helped you guys become as successful as you become.
Yeah, it's in my role today as it stands, it is the single biggest topic or aspect of the company that I spend thought and time diving into, because the culture is, yes, we have awesome systems and there's unbelievable opportunity for agents within Matthews who are come over to Matthews to grow, scale their business, build teams, etc. But the culture, if you ask any agent here, I would like to think they're appreciative of the platform and all the systems and tools we provide them to go out and be successful. But if you really ask most, like, hey, one thing, what is it? They'd say it's the culture, right? It's the culture. And so it kind of gets back to what I spoke about, the need to be successful versus the want. Everybody wants to be successful, but how many people need to? So with that need comes the requirement for sacrifice, especially early on in your career. You sacrifice time with your family, with your friends, you sacrifice your body, right? There's not a lot of time to have a healthy life and what do they call it, the work-life balance thing. And it's not happening in your 20s in brokerage, right? You sacrifice your 20s to have options in your 30s is what I tell a lot of the younger hires. most of the things in life that are important to a new agent also often are the first to be let go. And the difference between the ones that make it and the ones who don't is as simple as the agent who makes the sacrifice over a long period of time. Not a month, not even a year or two. I mean, like 3, 4, 5 years of 5 years of career. It's a tremendous amount of sacrifice of the things you value coming into your career. So that mental toughness literally defines, to your question, defines the culture of Matthews. We go hard. Like, I mean, I don't know how else to put it. Like, there's no other way to say it. I mean, you've been in the office. It's loud. It's intense. Insane amount of energy. Jim Harbaugh quote. We want to approach every day with a level of enthusiasm unknown to mankind. I mean, it's like a trading pool. People getting after it, people pushing each other, encouraging each other. We have theme days, tell the truth Monday, competition Tuesday, two proposal Thursday. Like, these are things I picked up from Coach Carroll. So if he's listening, I appreciate that. But I mean, this is what I love most about the company. It's energy, which is the byproduct of the culture, right? And I remember being at other brokerage companies, and it was quiet, dude. I mean, it was really quiet. It's like a library. You could hear people typing, and that was like quiet desperation. If I could hear someone typing, I was like, I can't be here, and that's not a good spot in the brokerage world where, it's like working out. Why do you work out with a buddy, right? It's because every day you don't necessarily wake up and you're 100% ready to get after it. And there are some days, for whatever reason, you have a newborn, you didn't sleep, you didn't sleep at all the night before. I don't know, something happened. You just, you're not feeling it. That's why you have other people that say, hey, come on, let's go, let's get after it. And real agents feed off energy. They feed off other people's success. It's, we always say we love sibling rivalry. We want our agents to wish success on their other agents, but always wanted to be one deal better. And so they see someone else in their office close a deal, ring the bell, they get fired up. Then they apply that energy and enthusiasm into their assignments, with, which combined with what is the best in class, marketing and support platform, it increases their chances of delivering awesome results for the property owner. So, I mean, that's why our slogan is legends only. Okay. We only hire agents who want to be legends in the industry. We don't want good. We don't want agents who have a nice little career. Matthews is for legends only. So, is the question, how do you keep the culture as we get bigger, 300 people or something? Like, well, number one, it's hard. It's really hard. I'm sure that's probably something you spend time on yourself, because I know your company also to a significant degree has grown, as you guys have done very well in your space. So, how do you never lose the tenacious energy that comes with being a startup, but having 300 people, and, whether it's 300 or on your way to 3,000, how do you hold on? And my answer is the only way that happens is if we continue to make the right choices in who leads the office and who we hire, right? So who leads each office? We have 11 offices around the country, and I'm not scalable. I can only be in one office at a time. So the other 10, I mean, in essence, I look at it that I'm handing the culture over to that individual to shepherd it, and on that end, I encourage all the agents, whether it's senior all the way to the newest guy or gal who just got hired yesterday. When I'm in their office, I'm in Austin right now. I appreciate Jeff Miller letting me use his office to do this. I'll sit a new agent down who's been here 2 days, and I give them the speech: is take ownership of this place, take ownership of the culture. You live here. Dude, you spend 14, 15 hours a day here. Like, you spend 3 hours at your apartment, and you spend 12 hours at an office. This is where you live, man. And so, don't just assume the leader of the office or the top, agents are gonna keep it together. No, take ownership of the environment you work in, and then we give them a roadmap of what fundamentally defines Matthews culture, and that gets back to the work ethic, always protecting your teammates, the need to be successful, the legends only. It's all kind of wrapped in the same thing of like, this place is, it's intense.
I couldn't agree with that more. I think, one thing I've learned as we've watched our culture kind of evolve is, and just in my career so far, is a great culture you're gonna have a bunch of people who are just fighting for the mission, fighting to win, fighting to see the company achieve its goals. And if you have a bad culture, you're gonna have a bunch of people, crickets, that don't really care and are kind of doing what they can to get by and just kind of stay there and stay afloat. And I think all of those little things go such a long way in kind of defining how you create success in a business. And you guys have obviously done that incredibly well. I think we had a couple questions come in from the audience. Matt, you want to ask?
Yeah, we've got Alex who says, fight on, class of 98. He wants to know where you're seeing opportunities in the market today. And I was going to kind of piggyback off that too, on just from like an expansion plan, because I know you guys have done a lot with starting in the retail net lease space and expanding to other product types. If you can kind of, hit on both of those maybe on currently today and where you might be growing as a firm.
All right, let me unpack the question into two separate questions, right? So one is where are opportunities? I assume he means from like a principal side or a brokerage side?
Principal.
All right, principal side, okay. And the other one is Matthews and how we see opportunities as the firm grows. So I'll talk about Matthews first, and then I'll get to the principal question. So look, everybody sees, there's going to be, it says there's a lot of opportunities, right? A lot of opportunities. How we actually quantify them, we look at markets as we expand. We look at markets. It's very simple. Like brokerage is not rocket science, all right? So it's really simple, which is probably why someone like me can be relatively decent at it. Stock and velocity, all right? So stock is how many buildings, how many owners, and velocity is the historical average turnover on an investment sale. We look at leasing in terms of vacancy and then debt origination, but really on the investment sale side is the historical turnover. So that's generally speaking how we choose markets to expand into across all product types. So markets that we like, that we just opened Phoenix. We love Phoenix, so we're gonna go big there. Houston, Denver, South Florida, Tampa, or Miami. We opened Nashville. We're in San Diego. I mean, there's a lot of markets that, it's really just a function of capital. Because remember, we're self-funded, no debt, no investors. So, while we'd love to open 50 offices, we have to be very calculated and strategic of which markets we do that in. So within the brokerage industry, we love high credit net lease is still trading really well. I was on the call the other day with a big owner. We almost seen cap rates compress if that's possible. So that's been those assets are still very liquid. Multifamily, there's a pause March, April when the pandemic hit, but not once the legislation, especially in blue states, kind of settled in and buyers figured out how they could transact with and around it. We've seen, and lenders came back in outside of just requiring 12 months principal and interest, they're lending again. So multifamily, industrial continues to be, the darling of the industry. So those are three focuses of ours where we see even greater opportunity, and we'll turn the volume up there. As a principal, man, it depends on what your motivations are, right? And so this is what I talk to agents. Don't go into a call, don't go into a meeting with an agenda, right? With an agenda of like how you see this going. You got to really ask good questions and listen to the client. And if you ask the right questions, you'll hear what the client's looking to accomplish. And I'll simplify. There's two buckets, right? There's a passive investor who doesn't want management, wants guaranteed income, and more or less wants to put a property on a shelf. Typically, and I'm generalizing here because they're in the later stages of their life. They want to enjoy time traveling or with their grandkids, and they don't want to be dealing with day-to-day management. Well, if that's the case, I would say the opportunities in net lease. I really like net lease industrial. Obviously, high credit net lease. There's drugstores. There's QSRs. I personally like deals, even if they're longer leases, even if it's a lower cap. I like deals with really as low as possible rent, because God forbid, one thing we've learned in retail over the last 10, 15 years, you never know what's going to happen over the course of a decade. And in the event I ever lost my tenant or a tenant, something changed with the industry that made what my tenant sells or services they provide not relevant. I want to be able to replace the rent and have really good real estate, which again, the rent's the function of the real estate. So, or if you're an owner where it's all value add, it's, hey, I'm in the prime of my income producing property acquisition strategy. I have the energy to roll up my sleeves, get in there, turn units in the multifamily, re-tenant, industrial or multi-tenant retail. Well, then it's really just about value add. And that's a function of understanding the local markets, in my opinion, of really understanding where are market rents, how much is it going to cost you to get the space, whether it's industrial, retail, multifamily, to get the unit, the space to a condition that you can achieve market rent, how much it's going to cost you to get there, and then running that model, whether it's a simple, current and pro forma cap rate model, or it's a 10-year cash flow model with, levered, unlevered IRR thresholds you're trying to hit. It's really about understanding where market rents are and how you could get there, okay? Because some properties are rent control and it creates challenges, but it's a loaded question. I understand why people ask it. I always kind of bounce it back to the owner and say, well, what are you looking to accomplish? Like, how do you define yourself and as an investor? And once they answer that question with me, then I can properly guide them, in my humble opinion, what the best asset class will be for them.
It's a great answer. And I think, everybody wants to have that crystal ball. We have a crystal ball section, and we'll talk a little bit more about stuff like that. There's a couple more questions from the audience along the same line, so let's try to maybe keep it to the topics we can. Question from seemingly a principal: with the rise of COVID-19, do you foresee a glut of see-through office space in major markets? If so, what would you advise owners to do to be competitive to ride this out?
Full disclosure, we don't do a lot of office, and it's not because we don't like office. It's just there's only so much time in the day, and we've had success in retail, then we had success in multifamily, we're having a lot of success in industrial. We just hadn't gotten around to it yet. So I guess that's one of the benefits we've had with COVID is our platform has more or less been unaffected by what's happening in office. Yes, I do see a inherent issue with office space in general and or Class C, because that's usually the first to go, right? Because what is the issues? People, as of right now, they don't want to be in tight spaces. They don't want to be packed into an office. And so if they are going to, they'd rather have it in a nice office or an office that has the luxury to provide amenities that avoid certain social distancing issues. So I do see there being a problem there. What I would do, I would look to get out of the property, but it depends on the asset. I know you're looking for a general answer here. I would never recommend fire selling an asset. If there's a clear and executable path to leasing up the space, if you're low levered, it gives you options. It gives you flexibility to wait for the market to come back to what degree it does. I do believe that everything tends to be an overreaction. You look at 9/11, right? I was having this conversation the other day with someone. 9/11, I was 20 years old, and so I was old enough to be profoundly impacted by not only what happened on that day, but how it changed our behavior on a go-forward basis for the next year or 2 or 3 years. Even 3-4 years later, you'd get on an airplane and you'd have anxiety, like, is something bad going to happen? 10 years later, you're not thinking about it anymore. Respectfully, you're like, oh, there are certain things that change. You got to take your shoes off at the airport, but people have a way of forgetting certain things. And I think that's going to happen to a degree with COVID. Certainly masks, face masks will probably be just part of our life on a go forward basis when you're traveling through the airport, when you're at a big football game. But I do believe eventually, whether it's 3 or 5, 7, 10 years from now, people will get back in the office. I know we're big believers in office space. I'm not a believer in the work from home. I have a great work from home setup. I don't really like it. The biggest reason is, at least in brokerage is like being in a band. Everybody could play their instrument at home, but it's only music when it's all done together, right? So, I would say it is my opinion that humans are very social creatures, and inevitably we have an innately strong desire to be around other people. And a lot of people did not know that about themselves. I would say people, myself included, were like, no, I like my space. And all of a sudden, 30 days into the quarantine, we're like, I got to get out. I want to be around people. And so if you're low levered, I'd say hang in there. You're just going to have to take it on the chin. If you could get out and get your equity into something else while you still are leased up and debt's still ideally deliverable for a new buyer, I recommend doing it. But it really gets back to what your individual investment goals look like.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Kyle. I think people tend to overreact personally, and we're big on the office culture. We've done plenty of surveys with our team. We have 150 now. I think 90% of them are pretty anxious to get back in the office.
Yeah.
Most would today
Yeah,
if they could.
same here. Same
A
here.
lot want to wait until they maybe feel a little more comfortable. But I think that I'm long office still. I know being in your office, Kyle. Like I'm curious to hear how production has changed with people working from home versus in the office because we all feed off each other here. We all push each other, feed off
Yeah.
each other. It's an environment that's really hard to match, and I'm curious what you've seen production kind of change look like on your end. Are people still anxious to get in the office? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, production sucks when you work from home. Like, it's not as good. I would say 40% drop in calls, proposals, meetings, listings. Like, I mean, whether it's a young guy or gal who's got 3 roommates who, their job is not the way brokerage is, where you go, go, go. Their job's like, okay, do a little work. I get my check every 2 weeks, and they're sitting there playing Call of Duty at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday, and our agents at home trying to, talk to owners on the phone, doing the best they can to ask good questions and listen to them, or it's someone living at home with their parents, or on the other end of the spectrum is the senior agent who, generalizing here, has a family, has 2.5 kids at home, is trying to homeschool them, got noise, and it's very difficult to balance your needs as a parent with your needs as a professional, and so you just have a massive loss of productivity. That's my opinion. I don't know, convince me otherwise, right? So our office, it's up depending on the local, some states are more, especially right now, like, they're quarantining, other states are more electoral. We kind of leave it up to the agents and, let them pursue their business as they see fit. Someone wants to work from home, like that's their call, dude. I'm not gonna talk them out of it. So.
More property related questions, I think, which is kind of front on everybody's mind. Do you see a lot of retail spaces getting transformed into multifamily? Like, where do you see like the most, I guess, redevelopment happening in the industry?
Retail space is tough to transform to multifamily. I know it's been a big push on the REIT side. We do a lot of REIT business, and it's all about redevelopment over the last 2-3 years. And most redevelopment is adding retail GLA or really going vertical with multifamily. Redeveloping retail space is tricky because you basically either have to have a totally vacant property, and if it's totally vacant, you start to ask the question, why was it ever retail? It must have been, pretty bad location, or you could have a lot of vacancy, maybe just COVID hit the property at the wrong time, but then like there's still 2 or 3 tenants on long-term leases, and then you approach them, and if they're actually a functional business, they're going to look at it as an opportunity to cash in and say, all right, you want to buy me out of my lease? Here's my price. And then, your in essence, your land cost goes up before you even get to scraping the property. So it's all about the coverage ratio of the property on the lot. I mean, if you have just, one box on a giant parking lot and it's zoned appropriately, or you have relationships with the city, certainly there's a huge opportunity there. But I wouldn't say you're going to see, this massive transformation of half the retail in the United States to multifamily. It's much more complicated than that. You'll see some, but and perhaps you'll see an acceleration of what was to a degree already happening, which is some retail just is not meant to be retail on a go-forward basis. But it's tough. There's a lot of moving parts there to have a retail center with 15 tenants and a giant lot. Somehow you can have all of them leave, scrape it, and go vertical. I mean, it's a very costly process.
Yep. In terms of placing capital outside of your local market, do you see more capital from different markets coming in, outside of their local area, especially with like the digital age of CRE becoming more common?
No, we saw it at the, in the early 2000s, with the net lease space. That was the first time you saw, an apartment owner in California buying a Walgreens in Jacksonville, Florida. I meant, because it was about communicating the message that, understanding what's important is guaranteed income, higher cash on cash, simplicity of life. You're like, okay, well, it kind of goes from a pure real estate play to, some of it's real estate, but a lot of it's credit and tenant and guarantee of the income stream. So we saw it there. Technology has only accelerated and advanced that capital migration. And now, and again, I'm 38, so I can't sit here and say, oh, well, in the 80s and 90s, it was like this, but I can tell you, at least in my time, it feels, I'll call it a feeling, okay? It feels like in the last 4 or 5 years, it's really accelerated based on the state, specifically the political climate of highly regulated states, let's call it blue states, you know, especially on the multifamily side, New York has been heavily affected by rent control, rent stabilization legislation with, you know, de Blasio and those guys. And then California just enacted statewide rent control last year. And now they have, you know, eviction moratoriums and things like that. So I'm not commenting on the decisions. I'm commenting on the influence in the owner behavior. Owners are saying, you know what, I don't know if I want my capital tied up in real estate where the state government appears to be looking at me like I'm, you know, I'm the enemy and they're coming after them. So we're seeing a big increase in capital migration from the New Yorks, the Californias, you know, into the Texases, the Floridas, a lot of the Smile states, the Southeast, the Nashville, Tennessee markets like that. So I think, you know, I think I answered your question there, right?
Yeah, for sure. Good question just came in that I'm curious your take on. Have you been involved in adjusting lease terms for retail tenants, hospitality, restaurants, gyms, et cetera, that have experienced
Yeah,
reduced revenues?
yes, yes, we have. It's a rapidly growing segment of the services we've offered. We've, you know, historically not emphasized that because we are so active and, you know, kind of, I always say complacent, but we were kept busy with our investment sale, leasing, and debt origination business. But especially on the hyper specialist agents, we have some agents here who specialize not only, you know, there's a net lease tenant, then there's a drugstore tenant, then, or sorry, there's a net lease agent, then there's a drugstore specialist, and then there's agents at Matthews. You know, we have guys and gals who like literally all I do is Walgreens or all I do is 7-Eleven. And so as they've captured a lot of market share in their tenant vertical, so to speak, they've actually built relationships with the tenants and the landlords, which in today's environment where a lot of tenants need rent modification, you know, lease modifications. I would say some perhaps don't need it, but it's a little more predatory or opportunistic program they're looking for. Our agents, given their relationships with the tenants and the landlords, are in a unique position to add value to that process where a tenant's like, look, I want to be here. It's a really bad time for us. What flexibility would you have as my landlord? And vice versa. Landlord's like, look, I really want you to stay. You know, long term, this is a viable site for you. Obviously, right now, whether it's a shutdown or just COVID affected, COVID's effect on, you know, the tenant specific business. The landlord saying, hey, I'm willing to work with you. So more often than not, it's a pretty amicable process or conversation between the two parties. Every now and then it gets a little, you know, obviously a little heated because you know, to a degree have not always are the interests aligned, so to speak.
A couple of good ones. You know, I'll ask this one. It's a tough question and a sensitive question in today's world, but you know, I've been in your office a bunch, and I think, you know, relative to, you know, I think how far we have to go in making commercial real estate a more diverse industry. You happen to have a very diverse team. You know, I noticed that in all the offices of yours I've been in. I think you've been exceptional in this regard. Is there anything specifically you do to promote diversity within Matthews, and how do we do that better as an industry?
Well, that's a very sensitive topic, right? And so we do not, as a company, we always say we hire mindsets over skill sets. So really, our hiring decision is solely based on the mentality makeup of the person. So gender, ethnicity, whatever it is, does not come into play when making hiring decisions. The industry has been, let's call a spade, is historically not the most diverse industry. So I've never shared this publicly. I don't believe in virtue signaling, but you know, hey, you got me on this thing. So a couple of years ago, Matthews decided to send our recruiting teams to 6 historically Black colleges as an actual investment of time, energy, and our infrastructure to the best of our ability, see if we can take actual steps to increase the diversity of our sales force, of our platform. You know, it's something, obviously this happened a couple of years ago, and we've been doing it. It's something that we don't publicly pat ourselves on the back. I just looked at it like, I was blessed to have the opportunity to grow up in a very diverse community of the National Football League. You know, so you think about probably the most diverse place in the United States is like an NFL locker room. And I was I was very fortunate to grow up around different cultures, ethnicities, and come to really love a lot about so many of them. And then my experience at USC, so that kind of put into my mind when I got into real estate, like, gosh, you just don't see a lot of diversity in the industry. So when I was in a position at Matthews to go out and actually kind of direct our hiring process, that's to answer your question, those are one of many steps we've taken. We want to be better at it. It's just it's really about, in my opinion, it's about messaging and making this industry. I'm the biggest believer in real estate. All right, like I am convinced this is the greatest industry in the history of mankind. So it's about making other groups of people aware of the opportunities that exist, and then to the best of our abilities, creating programs that allow everybody the opportunity to get in the business when it can be tough, especially financially, because it is a commission job early on, and that can be really hard. So we're doing what we can. We can always be better, but yeah, I think I answered that question.
Yeah, that's look, it's a tough one, obviously. And I can say, firsthand that I've seen it. You've done a great job there, and we're well ahead of the times and some of the stuff that you guys have done.
Yeah, I will say agents are independent contractors, so I think by law we don't track ethnicities and genders and all that. But I'll say a platform, plus or minus 1% or 2. It was I think it was north of 70% women, and then it was over 40% minority. So, if we're allowed to be proud of that, hey, I'm proud of that. But again, I know it's important, Mike, but it's really about the mindset for us. I don't care how tall or short you are. I don't care where you come from. If you have the need to be great, I can work with you all day long.
Totally. A lot of questions have come in about distressed loans, expectations of foreclosures coming over the next 12, 18 months. What sectors? I think there's the obvious, the hospitalities and some of those that we can all point to. But what are the sectors you think are going to get hit the most? What do you see in that world? And are you tracking? Are you tracking?
We track all that. We track all that. Hospitality, office, multi-tenant office, multi-tenant retail. Not as much in multifamily, but you're going to see multifamily in certain markets that, one of the blessings of 2008 is we were so overbuilt that there was this like kind of boomerang effect on the other side. And over the last 10 years, for having such a bull market in real estate, most markets, like if anything, were underbuilt. Some of that was because of regulations in a market like Los Angeles, for instance, like they need so much more housing. And that is, in my opinion, the answer to the housing affordability question and crisis really is we got to have more housing. Okay. But in a lot of markets, there just is a lack of supply of housing. So even as we're experiencing job loss and then, rent softening, I think in the multifamily sector, you're going to be okay. Same with industrial, because it just is to a degree undersupplied. But multi-tenant retail, multi-tenant office, yes. Unfortunately, because they're note holders here, right? And these are people, and they're affected negatively. And candidly, with COVID, it's not their fault. Like none of us saw this coming, so it sucks. But it's part of the industry. So for us, in our role, it's making sure we're in touch with lenders, servicers, borrowers, offering up our services to all parties to the best of our abilities to help them throughout what is a very sensitive and very tough process, because lenders don't want to take the properties back. Borrowers don't want to lose the assets. So, it's just making sure we're available and provide services to whatever either party's needs are, but, we'll see. Yeah, it's coming down the pipe. I don't know if it'll be like 2008, 9, and 10. I know one of the surprises of that market was the culture of workouts, with lenders that historically before that had not really been present. I think lenders have really come around a long way, obviously some with governmental assistance or encouragement saying, hey, many of these is not a borrower's fault. It's not the property owner's fault. Like this is COVID. Like 2008, 9, 10 was a bubble caused by bad lending, but this was something altogether different. So it appears there's going to be, in a good way, kind of a culture amongst lenders, not always, obviously, but to the best of their abilities to work with the borrower to find a long-term way through this. But not every property is going to be saved. So, when that opportunity presents itself, we're here to provide the service.
So question, and I'll take a quick stab at just what we've seen at Crexi too, Kyle, before you jump in. But how has COVID affected transaction volume over the last 2 quarters, leasing activity over the last 2 quarters, just general activity in the market? How has it been affected the last 2 quarters? At Crexi, we saw, just so everybody's aware, some asset types get hit as much as 30% in terms of activity, buy-side activity, offers being generated, people connecting with brokers on properties, all the activity we see on Crexi got. Some stayed flat. Some asset types actually stayed surprisingly flat. Some were down as much as 30%. In June, we actually saw every single stat across all of leasing and all of transactions back to all-time highs. I still think there's obviously maybe a 5 to 15% discount or disconnect between what buyers want to pay and what sellers are willing to sell for. I don't know whose side is right. I don't know if it kind of winds up going towards the buy side or towards the sell side, and if we see a little adjustment in pricing, but that's what we've seen at Crexi across property types. I don't know what you guys have seen, Kyle, but you want to share some thoughts you've seen there?
Yeah, March, the first couple of weeks of March was, kind of like, hey, what's happening? And then mid-March it hit, and we had a lot of deals blow up. A lot of panic and buyers, just in my opinion, making emotional, rational decisions on many of them. I understand why, but looking back now, there's properties they, in my opinion, should have purchased, and there's other properties where it's the right question to ask. But April was tough, really tough. May, which is a blessing. I mean, May came out of nowhere, and we had a big May. And what we really look at as a company is the number of what proposals BOVs presented and number of listings signed up, right? And then historically, X amount of listings or sell, and so on and so forth. So May, we saw it shoot back up to pre-COVID levels, more or less. And then June, we had our biggest listing month in our firm's history. So, now the question is, how much of a bid-ask spread is there? And that's what I'm challenging the agents to really understand. Is it 5 bips? Is it 15? Is it 25? How much, if at all, has pricing moved? I will say, call attention, Real Capital Analytics, which we really like as a data source. Now, they don't track deals under 2.5 million. We do a lot of deals under 2.5 million, but Real Capital Analytics and forgive me, I might be off by a percentage or two. I believe April was down like 63% year over year. May was down 79%, I want to say. So you're talking down 70% plus or minus blended over the 2 months of real COVID, kind of settling in here. I'll be interested to see when June comes out. It's probably in the next week or two, they'll release a report. Again, our experience, obviously the pipeline's affected, but as a CEO, where I was on April 1st, like, oh man, this is going to be ugly. We didn't know how long it was last. We didn't know the severity of the disease. We didn't have any information. We didn't have testing. We didn't have a lot. And where we are today, like I'm as happy as can be relative to where I thought it could. It's like, the key to happiness is managing your expectations. So my expectations were so managed by mid-April of like, man, this year is going to be brutal, that now that it looks like it's going to be better, less of a drop than I anticipated, I'm like, man, this year's going to be great, And then on top of that, we were fortunate as a company because of, just building cash over the last 4 or 5 years. We didn't lay off one single employee. We didn't furlough any employees. And we also were able to bring on 100 new agents, which was part of the plan. So really push the gas pedal down all the way to the floor, while I would argue a lot of our, competitors were pulling back, laying off people. So the agents that were here, mind you, the probabilities of getting a listing or getting closing are lower than they were before because it's a tougher market, but they had the full support of the Matthews machine behind them the whole time. And on top of that, we added what, in our opinion, was an extremely quality class of new agents that started June 1st. So, I think your question was, what effect did it have? And, so I answered that. And then also, at the same time, kind of buying into that this market is actually going to be better than I initially anticipated, making those investments in the company.
Yeah, wide range of answers. You touched it a bunch of different ways. That was great.
Yeah.
I'll say, to echo that, really proud to say that we also did not have to let anybody go, did not have to furlough anybody. We've been able to grow through this, where a lot of our competitors going to do that, and I think that's something that that we're proud of, and hopefully, it's kind of clear skies ahead or clearer skies ahead. But obviously there's still some unknowns there. I know we're getting to just past an hour. We've had a lot of questions come in. I think we touched on most of them. Matt, do you have closing thoughts or?
I mean, I always got to ask a couple of questions off topic here. But Kyle, I know you're a busy guy. Are you in your spare time? I know you got 3 kids in the family too. Physical book guy, Audible guy, podcast. What kind of stuff do you do from that angle? And what would you maybe be looking at on a day-to-day basis from that?
Yeah. Man, I don't got a lot of time for that, but I wish I did. I got 3 kids at home. I got 300 kids at the office. That takes a lot of my time. It feels like that, right? It takes a lot of my time, but books, I love Extreme Ownership by my boy Jocko Willink, great Navy SEAL commander. He had a book that was very consistent with the way I viewed myself or things that happened in my life, whether it's career, professionally. Like it's all, I always say everything's my fault, right? If something good if something bad happens, like, hey, it's my fault. I got to figure it out. All right, I got to take ownership of what's happening. I'm not a victim. All right, like if something bad happens in business, if I lose a deal, if a hire doesn't work out the way I thought, if a new office doesn't produce the way I expect, everything's my fault. So and as a CEO, I guess that's literally what you sign up for. So everything's your fault, so that's a great book. I would say. I'm reading, I just finished Steve Schwartzman. Now I listen to audiobooks now just because, like, again, sitting down and reading a book, do I have the time? No. And then I'm so damn tired, I fall asleep if I sit down and read a book. So, and you think my kids are going to let me do that? Not a chance. So audiobook, Steve Schwartzman's What It Takes. So founder of Blackstone, like that was outstanding. I'm reading a book right now. I just started. It seems like a good read. I think it's The Harder you work, the luckier you get by Joe Ricketts, who founded Ameritrade. And then I'm a huge subscriber of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. I think it's a great book. It's a big read. You got to get through the first couple hundred pages and then the story starts to flow, but it's very profound. And podcast, I'm a Joe Rogan guy. I don't know is that good or bad. I love Joe Rogan.
I love Joe Rogan, man.
Yeah. So,
oh yeah.
I like the way he thinks. I like his authenticity. I like the people he brings on, a very diverse group of people from different industries that, whether obviously MMA and comedy, but he brings on business leaders. You gotta listen to the ones with Elon Musk, of course, right? Those are the May one with Elon Musk, like blew my mind about Neuralink and things like that. I mean, that's so far above my pay grade that, if I can just tap into it and listen to it, it's pretty good.
Great.
Nice, man.
Well, Kyle, thank you, man. Thank you for what you're doing to the industry. You're definitely taking it to a different level and a whole step forward. And I know our audience really enjoyed this. Still have hundreds of people on, but unfortunately, I think we'll let you get back to your busy schedule. And we really appreciate you doing this with us, man.
That's all good. I don't do media, so I don't know how you got me on here, but I really enjoyed it. So I appreciate it. We'll have to do it again sometime down the road. We'll do it live. Okay.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, Kyle. Talk soon.
All right. See you, bud.
See you, bud.
Have a great one.